Financial Survival Network, helping you to survive and thrive in the new economy. Get our complimentary newsletter at financialsurvivalnetwork.com. This is the Financial Survival Network.
You are listening to the financialsurvivalnetwork.com. I'm Kerry Lutz on 1230 WBZT, and it's time for another Triple Lutz Report. This is episode 334. The date is January 27th, 2014. So, funny story. Real funny story. And it'll show you what a small financial survival network world it really is out there. You know, I moved down to Palm Beach County, Florida here. God, it's over a year already. And it's been a great move. So I don't really know anybody. You know, my sister lives down here, my niece. Got a couple of friends down in Miami, but that's 85 miles from here. Long way to drive just to say hello to your friends. But I do. They're really close friends. My New York friends I really treasure. Milena and Lakia, good friends. But so I joined these meetups. I've told you about them. You go to meetup.com. If you have an interest, there's a meetup for you, and it's a great company. They're not a sponsor. They're not paying me to say these nice things about them. You just meet great people, and you know me, I love to eat, even though I've lost all this weight, and Dr. Crandall says I've got to lose another 10 pounds, and I've been trying my hardest, lost a couple more pounds. I'm on my way to doing it, and I will do it. But so I joined this discussion meetup called Thoughtful, Provoking Conversations. And we're part of another meetup, which is things to do, friends to do things with. And finally, that meetup starts charging dues, so we have to split off from it. And I volunteer to set up a formal meetup group for it. And we're a few weeks into it, and it's all sorts of different people. And the way it works is we have a place, we found some space, and we're kind of just squatters in this space. It's in a supermarket upstairs. They don't even know that we're there. We buy stuff in the supermarket to eat, drink while we're having the meetup, and before and after. After the meetup, a bunch of us get together, or we'll go out to eat dinner, and they're just great people. And the guy who started it, guy from India named Shri, really good guy. And we're just having a lot of fun doing it. And, you know, Florida, I would call it Siberia for intellectuals. Because, look, the weather's nice. People just want to be outside, go to the beach. And it's kind of the sensual, it's not really for heavy-duty thinkers, at least a lot. I mean, not that there aren't intelligent people here who are into the thought or more heady pursuits. There are, but not the majority by any stretch. These are low-information voter types here. And I'm kind of building up to this. So, you know, I go there just because I like discussions, rhetoric, and just fun. I'm not there for politics. You know, I hate politics, but when you're dealing with economic, financial survival, how to survive, how to thrive, explaining why things are blowing up around the globe, at least my interpretation of it, sometimes you got to talk about politics. There's no avoiding it. So a couple weeks ago, have a discussion about draft and conscription. So you know I'm a libertarian at heart, and the idea that the government can tell me that you report to so-and-so a place, you get a physical, you have an army doctor or somebody probing, poking, and you give us specimens of your blood, your urine, and other bodily functions, you know that's not going to sit well with me. And a question comes up about the draft. Is it right? And of course, I'm opposed to it. And I make mention that the founders were opposed to a standing army. And the fact is, I didn't go into this at the meetup, but until World War I, the U.S. really didn't have a standing army. And one of the reasons why the United States didn't get into World War I until late 1916, early 1917 is because they had to put together a standing army. We never had one until after World War I. And even after World War I, we didn't have much of a standing army because if you remember, Pearl Harbor caught the U.S. totally unawares. We had more of one after World War I than before, obviously, but not until World War II and the aftermath and the Korean War did we really have this massive standing army. But the founders had good reason. And this woman, I'll call her Frida, makes a snide comment about what the founding fathers thought or wanted and how antiquated that notion is. So I had her number right away, but I'm not there to argue with people. And hey, Frida can think what Frida wants. It's a free country. I don't care. She's entitled to her viewpoint. I just don't happen to agree with it. I wouldn't call myself a constitutional law scholar or a constitutional history scholar by any stretch, but I've read pretty extensively. I've read books about Alexander Hamilton, Jefferson, Madison. I've read the Federalist Papers, a number of books about them, but I'm by no means an expert, and I don't want to even pretend to be. Admirer of many things about Jefferson. I don't think he was quite elevated to the point where he has been. He was a bit of a dilettante and an idealist, but I do subscribe to many of his philosophical viewpoints, especially the government that governs least is that which governs best. You've heard me quote it many a time. And, of course, George Washington, Benjamin Franklin. I mean, these men, we just don't have anywhere near the equivalent of these minds in today's world. We're just totally a ship without an anchor compared to back then. So, gone to a few more of these. They've been very successful. The participants love it. And I've invited other people who've been at the predecessor group to join us. And person Richard H., I don't even know his last name, he joins us. Sitting at my table is Shri. Like I said, he appears to be libertarian-minded, although he believes in global warming. That's fine. Everybody's entitled to their viewpoint. I just don't happen to ascribe to it, but that's fine. And Alan, he's a former banker. His girlfriend, French lady, lovely woman, not the best command of the language, but she really is a bright woman and is able to get her viewpoints across without having a great command of the English language, which to me shows what an intelligent woman she is. And we have a moderator, which varies from week to week. And Frida is our moderator last week. And I kind of was like, okay, this is going to be interesting because I know that she really doesn't care for me. And we start mixing it up. And I would never write a political question. I don't really want to get into it, although last week or the week before I'd said my question was, is the U.S. becoming a police state? And not something you could really take issue with. So we're going around and, we somehow get into the issue of the crash and banking. And, I just make my view known that Frida says that it was a failure of free enterprise. And I said, this wasn't free enterprise. This was government control. Federal Reserve, the Treasury, believing that every American should own a house, whether they can afford to or not, whether they should own a house or not. And this is what happens when government control of the economy takes place. And she's just fuming at me. And we start going around, and each time she starts cutting me off. And the other members of the group are like starting to get annoyed, and I am starting to get annoyed. And we get into a number of confrontations, and I just say, you're not acting as a moderator here. Like, you're acting as a debater here, and this isn't meant to be a debate group. And, she starts going after Richard because he says something, and she says, well, you're a Republican. And I said, Richard is no Republican. Everything I've heard Richard say, he's a libertarian, if anything. And I said, Richard, are you a member of any political party? Because you don't sound like you are. And he said, absolutely not. And, we go on, and poor Frida is just getting more and more flummoxed and flabbergasted. And finally, Sri says, you're being rude here, Frida. And he confronts her. And, man, by the time we're done here, like, Frida is really upset. She doesn't stay with us and have dinner with us afterwards. And what I didn't know at the time, and this is a shout out to you, Richard, is Richard, I say to him, hey, you sound like a libertarian. You should really listen to my radio show here. I think you'd enjoy it. And he says to me, Kerry, I listen to your show every single day. And I was just blown away. I said, well, I should have known, because you sure sound like you do, Richard. And I said, I hope you're coming to the Liberty Mastermind Symposium in Vegas. He said, I can't make it, going to some benefit at the Trump mansion. But, hey, Richard, it was great meeting you. And, it is a small financial survival network world out there. You never know who you're going to meet, who's a listener. It's just great to meet you, Richard. And this thing was just total fun. It gave me some ideas on how to expand our reach. And it really made me feel good, because I know that that there's just thousands of you out there. Every day, there's 20,000 or more of you out there listening to the show. And I never knew. I figured a few hundred people listen, a few hundred of you out there are listening. I'm a success. I never really cared how many of you were listening. I still don't. I mean, it's just great that there's thousands, but really just that you're listening is just the most wonderful experience in the world. I'm going to talk more about that. I want to go over some things I talked about on the live show, which I'm phasing out from West Palm. It's just too time consuming. I talk to more of you this way on the financialsurvivalnetwork.com. Triple Let's Report 334 1230 WBZT. And I am back. financialsurvivalnetwork.com 1230 WBZT. So about this meetup group. So I didn't want Frida to not come back. It's really not a fair matchup. One progressive against 3.5, maybe 4 libertarians who actually use this thing called logic and reasoning and carefully thought out arguments going up, up against progressive. Honestly, I could whip her with my blindfolded, probably gagged, my hands tied behind my back, bound and gagged. But like I said, we didn't want to alienate anybody. But there was an article just written about how conservatives, and I hate that term. I am not a conservative by any stretch. I hate the system, want it changed. I want it abolished, but you can't just abolish it all at once. Let's face it, what'll happen then. We will have pure, total anarchy, and that is something you don't want, I don't want. So it's got to be gotten rid of. It probably will just be abolished. It'll probably just collapse, which is a form of abolition. So, point being that this article, psychological study, when you have liberals listen to conservative viewpoints, basically they can't separate a conservative's viewpoint from the individual, and that goes for libertarians as well. They can't say that, okay, I disagree with your viewpoint, but you could still be a good person. basically, I hate your viewpoint, I hate you. Whereas a conservative or a libertarian can listen to a liberal's viewpoint and say, all right, I don't agree with you, but you could still be a good person. Witness the fact that I can't stand George Clooney's politics, can't stand Matt Damon's politics or Ben Affleck's politics or any number of the progressives' artists' politics, and yet I could sit down and I can watch a movie that they're in and just think they're fabulous. Or Kevin Costner, just fill in the blank. You know, I can watch their movie, I can watch their so-called art and really enjoy it, and yet not think that they're bad people. Misguided, perhaps, poorly thought out reasoning skills, poorly thought out logic. Yeah, but not think that they're misguided, evil creatures that belong in the black pits of hell. And yet the other way around, they can't make that jump. And Frida is one of those people. When she got out, she thought that she had been thrown into the pits of hell for 2 hours, and she had to beat a hasty retreat, and God knows how many glasses of alcohol she had to ingest just to know that she was still human. So very sad. So anyway, on to the next story. This one is just, it made me laugh hysterically. Used it in the terrestrial show, but I just wanted to throw a quote out at you. Mark Twain said, "The secret of getting ahead is getting started." And fortunately, I managed to get started at the Financial Survival Network, and we're all about helping you get started to reach your financial goals for the future. So don't forget to go over to financialsurvivalnetwork.com, sign up for the newsletter. I'm in the process of throwing the finishing touches on it. It's about Marcella Sills, PS 106. Imagine when you have so many schools in New York City that you got to give them all numbers to keep track of them. Reminds me of that old show Secret Agent Man with Patrick McGowan, taking away your name and giving you a number. That's what the New York City school system is all about. So go there, get that free weekly newsletter, get those reports. And I saw this story and I just loved it because it's so un-PC. And this guy in we always talk about people on the Financial Survival Network who don't want to face reality, which is most of the human race. I was just programmed to face it at such an early age. You probably were too, which is why you're listening. So there's a Chinese billionaire, and he's offering $1 billion HK, which is about 140 million US, to any man who can turn his lesbian daughter straight. You know I'm good, but I don't think I'm that good. She's probably too young for me anyway. Cecile Chow Sasung told a Malaysian newspaper his daughter is single, and despite the fact she had a commitment ceremony with her long-term partner in 2012, and he thinks it's not too late to change her mind about men. I don't know about that one, but Gigi Chow told the South China Morning Post her father could offer up his entire fortune. I don't think my dad's offering of any amount of money would be able to attract a man I would find attractive. I beg to differ with her, but I don't think it would be me. But I'm sure the guys are lining up in Hong Kong trying to prove her wrong. God, I would love to be one of them, and I'd love to be the one to prove her wrong. But I'm too old right now. In my younger days, it probably would have been worth a trip to Hong Kong to find out. She also said her partner, Sean Eve, was distraught after Chow's father's latest offer. Evidently, he's been upping the ante. Chow was outed by her father as being gay when he announced his initial offer in 2012. Since then, she has become an advocate for lesbian, gay, bi, transgender rights and founded the group Big Love Alliance. I wonder if I could join it. I would like to. And I wonder if you have to fall into that category to join it. I'm willing to join the alliance if I can get a crack at her. For $140 million, what do I got to lose, right? And, hey, there was a decision that came up by Judge Edward Corman. You need a little background here. He's a judge in the Eastern District of New York. Of course, what the stories don't tell you, and you need to listen to the Financial Survival Network to find out, because once upon a time, I used to be in this business. Edward Corman was the U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District of New York, which makes him a prosecutor. And so many of the judges on the bench for the U.S. district courts, those are the trial courts, and they hear federal crimes, okay, they hear trials for federal crimes, were former prosecutors. Does that surprise you? So many of you don't even know what the federal courts do. Okay, so here's a case about a U.S. citizen, a PhD student, who's at McGill University in Montreal, had his computer confiscated while returning to the U.S., and the judge ruled sweepingly that the federal government had a right to confiscate laptops at the border without probable cause. So in other words, you're traveling overseas with your laptop, tablet, or smartphone. Yes, if they can take your laptop, they can take your tablet, they can take your smartphone, and as you re-enter the U.S., a federal official, for any reason or none, can take it away from you, look through it, and there's nothing you can do about it. So as this writer said, here's what I have on my laptop: years of email, private conversations from close friends about personal matters, some of them tragic, heart-wrenching, and life-changing. Similar messages from my husband. There are thousands of family photos, 99.9% of which I would prefer to be private. There's medical information about me and my family. I have business plans that are culmination of years of work and affect my family's current and future livelihood. Something else is there as well, something more intimate. What's on my laptop is a reflection of my mind. The unadorned evidence, good and bad, flattering and embarrassing of my victories and pratfalls, my joys and losses, my most elated moments and deepest thoughts. It's me. But here's the thing. Now, since the founding of the United States, and this applies to any country in the world, when you leave the country and you come back in, whether you're a citizen or a visitor, you have no right to privacy. It's always been this way, and anything that you bring into the country is subject to search and or seizure for virtually no reason at all. And it's subject to duty, taxation, or whatever. Now, the law needs to adapt because we're in the cyber age and we need some protections. So the way things stand now, carrying 200, however many years, 220 something years of precedent forward, 230, I never remember, but let's just go from 1776 Declaration of Independence and just assume that we were free from that moment on, even though the Constitution didn't come until a number of years later. So we're looking at 238 years, okay? Coming into this country, anything you have, alcohol, tobacco, drugs, whatever, they could take. So there needs to be some kind of carve out. There needs to be some kind of probable cause to do these searches. However, under the existing law, that's not the case, and Corman's decision is just and proper. So we need some protections. But aliens, on the other hand, have never had any rights to privacy and any expectation to privacy. This is the problem with government. You give them an inch and they're going to take 10 miles. So Corman is correct in his interpretation, but this was before we had a government that was looking to enslave us, and that's what they're all about now, and make no mistake about it. So got more of this up next. There's some amazing stories here. Kerry Lutz, financialsurvivalnetwork.com, Triple Lutz Report 334. These are tough times, and they're getting even tougher. The clock is ticking. The countdown to collapse is well underway. What are you going to do about it? Will you just wait for it to happen, or will you be ready when it happens? The decision is yours and yours alone. Join myself, Mickey Fulp, Robert Ian, David Morgan, Jeff Berwick, Elijah Johnson, Alan Butler, Gregory Manarino, Daniel Amaduri, Andy Hoffman, Tekoa Da Silva, Trace Mayer, one of the world's leading Bitcoin authorities, Bix Weir, Jay Taylor, and Gary Christensen at the Liberty Mastermind Symposium in Las Vegas on February 21st and 22nd, and learn how to create your plan to survive the collapse. The last Liberty Mastermind Symposium was one of the most highly rated conferences ever, and this one promises to be even better. Don't miss it. Join us and register now at libertymastermind.us. libertymastermind.us. This one is going to be out of this world, and it's going to be even better because it's in Las Vegas, Nevada. Go to Liberty Mastermind US and sign up today. And we're back. So, on the financialsurvivalnetwork.com, Triple Lutz Report 334. I don't know if you caught Obama's press report, his press, whatever you want to call it. I don't want to call it a press conference because this administration says nothing about nothing, and then they take nothing in line of questions. But there was a press conference where Obama laid out his vision that they were going to accept restrictions on the government's right to monitor phone calls, blah, 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 blah. You know all about it. And it was a bunch of nothing. And I scratched my head and say, why is he giving this press conference? What's the deal here? And then, sure enough, there was an independent review board that said the national security's mass data collection program is illegal and should be ended. And then it dawned on me, of course, he knew that report was coming out, and that whole press conference was merely a preemption of the review board's report. And Carney, the paid liar, press secretary of the White House, said, "We simply disagree with the board's analysis on the legality of the program." Isn't that great? And he was responding to a scathing report from the Privacy and Civil Liberties Oversight Board, the PCLOB, which said the program ran afoul of the law on several fronts, which if you've been listening to me, to the Financial Survival Network, FSN, for months. We've been telling you this, and what we've been telling you is no different than what the ACLU's been saying, the New York Lawyers Guild, Heidi over there, we've talked to her numerous times. I mean, these are natural enemies of the Financial Survival Network, of the libertarian movement. We've all been allied on this. And they said the bulk telephone records program lacks a viable legal foundation, the board's report said, adding that it raises serious threats to privacy and civil liberties and has only limited value. The report further said the NSA should purge the files. So the president didn't go nearly as far, of course, when he called last week for ending government control of the phone data collected from hundreds of millions of Americans. Of course he didn't. And Carney claimed the president in his address last week did directly derive some of his ideas from the board's draft recommendations. Yeah, right. But he made clear that Obama does not see eye to eye with them on the legitimacy of mass phone record collection. Look, I don't know about you, but me, most of my communication no longer takes place on the phone, especially when it comes to me and the kiddies. Like, they don't want to talk to me ever again, it seems. They're real content to just text back and forth with me. If I didn't insist on talking to them on Sundays, I don't know if we'd ever talk again unless we're in the same room. I mean, that's a little bit of hyperbole and exaggeration, but you know what I'm saying. Bulk of your communication with the outside world, unless you're over the age of 80, takes place electronically through email, through websites, through texting. And that's what they're monitoring all of. All right. The phone stuff is the least of it now. They're grabbing 200 million texts per day from around the world. They're grabbing billions of emails. I mean, yeah, if they want to go see the transaction receipt that I just got from GoDaddy.com, well, I guess they'll be happy. But, you know, it's all the other little stuff, like that lady was saying in the thing when they grabbed her laptop at customs, the ICE agent. But, you know, it's absurd. And, you know, the administration believes the program is lawful. Yeah, like the administration would know lawfulness if they tripped over it. It doesn't care. The administration and the government is becoming rogue. It's completely lawless. It makes its own laws and rules as it sees fit. That's what it does. Okay? So what's good about it, though, is that the findings could be used as leverage in federal lawsuits against NSA spying, which I hope it is. I mean, the report concluded that the NSA collection raises constitutional concerns with regard to U.S. citizens' rights of speech, association, and privacy. Look, think about this. The connections revealed by the extensive database of telephone records gathered under the program will necessarily include relationships established among individuals and groups for political, religious, and other expressive purposes, it said. And think about this. Compelled disclosure to the government of information revealing these associations can have a chilling effect on the exercise of First Amendment rights. Think about that. Dinesh D'Souza makes a documentary critical of the administration, and for a technical violation of campaign finance rules and laws, he now finds himself indicted and free on $500,000 worth of bail. The panel added that the program implicates constitutional concerns under the First and Fourth Amendments. You think? Maybe under the Fifth Amendment as well. It's a taking of private property, I would argue, for public purposes. Where's the compensation for it? They're compensating the phone companies and Google. Where's your compensation? The recommendations, of course, are sure to meet resistance in Washington. There's this hack, Mike Rogers, a Republican of Michigan. I hate political parties, you know that, who's been a staunch defender of the NSA. What do they have on him? He voiced dismay at the report's findings. Yeah, I'm sure there's just no reason they have nothing on you, do they? Right? Yeah, I'll betcha. I'm disappointed that the three members of the board decided to step well beyond their policy and oversight rule and conducted a legal review of a program that has been thoroughly reviewed, he said in a statement, noting that federal judges have found the program to be legal dozens of times, except, of course, Judge Leon recently, who said it's unconstitutional. Where'd you forget that, Rogers? Report also rejected claims that the program was necessary to cover up a gap in intelligence. This part I loved, arising from a failure to detect al-Qaeda members in the U.S. prior to September 11th terror attacks. And the U.S. officials had claimed that phone data collection program would have made clear that the terrorist mastermind was calling a safe house in Yemen. And this is such garbage. And they said the failure to identify his presence in the U.S. stemmed primarily from a lack of information sharing among federal agencies, not a lack of surveillance capabilities. The report said this was a failure to connect the dots, not a failure to connect enough dots. I mean, this is beautiful. I mean, finally somebody takes a stand, and you can't ask for better than this. And the PC Lob recommendations are also more sweeping than reforms proposed by another panel of experts. That panel, the Review Group on Intelligence and Communications Technologies, advised Obama to restrict phone surveillance to limited court order sweeps. And along with its call for ending bulk phone surveillance, the Oversight Board report outlined 11 other recommendations on surveillance policy. These guys are spot on, and they called for special attorneys to provide independent views in some proceedings before FISA as opposed to Obama's plan. I mean, these guys know what they're doing. I mean, they are spot on because, look, it's a question of you've been doing this stuff for 10 years now, actually 12, 13 years almost. If it's so effective, show these people the results. All right? Let's see a list of every single terrorist attack, at least in secret, that has been prevented by it. Okay? We have the right to know at this point, and you don't have to give the specifics, but let's see a list of them and a number of lives that have been saved and the cost. What has been the cost of this? I want to know the cost. And, you know, we have a right to know at this point. We really do. And if they can't prove it, it's put up or shut up. And we're entitled to proof. We can't just take the government's word for anything. It's like George Carlin said, you know, he just assumes that everything they say is a lie, and every lie, you know, it's the government. Let's face it. And they've lied to us so many times already. So enough on that subject. You're listening to the FinancialSurvivalNetwork.com. I'm Kerry Lutz on 1230 WBZT. This is Triple Lutz Report 334. Up next, the marijuana legalization bandwagon is getting out of control. Welcome back. I'm Kerry Lutz, FinancialSurvivalNetwork.com. Triple Lutz Report 1234. Triple Lutz Report 334. You're on 1230 WBZT. By the way, if you haven't signed up yet, Liberty Mastermind Symposium, you want to be there. Go to libertymastermind.us and just take a look at that roster of speakers. You will be blown away, I promise you. So this marijuana legalization bandwagon, I'm all in favor of it. You know that. And not because I do this stuff. I don't. It just makes total sense. But obviously in the state of Hawaii, it just doesn't get much more liberal than that. It's out of hand. Obviously, this lady in Hawaii who happens to be majority floor leader, she's smoking something far stronger than the herb. Listen to what she had to say. She promised she hasn't inhaled, but Rita Cabanilla is looking to marijuana to solve some of Hawaii's financial problems. She wants to legalize marijuana cultivation and export to pay off state debt. Cabanilla said she hopes to legalize cultivation, manufacturing, and exporting of marijuana and marijuana food products in Hawaii to pay off some of the state's billions of dollars in unfunded liabilities, as well as make infrastructure repairs and fund public education and human services programs. I mean, that's a lot to bite off there. This state would turn into a manufacturing state. Can you imagine factories that would be making Maui Wowie cookies and making marijuana macadamia nut candy for exports? I think that would be wonderful, said Cabanilla. Sure, she would think that. Hawaii is about $25 billion in the hole, encompassing the state retirement system, the Public Employee Union Health Fund, and outstanding bonds. The state also needs billions in repairs for roads, schools, and infrastructure. They went 300 in the hole, 350,000 in the hole on security for Obama's Hawaii vacation. And she's not even a big fan of it. But if that is what it takes for our state to be in the forefront where we can fix our roads, we can build more affordable housing. But if the people are stoned out, they won't even notice what the housing is like. We can help the homeless. That is the route we should go, she said. This is just incredible. I mean, what is this woman? Some of her colleagues support the plan, Cabanilla said, but won't necessarily come out and say it for good reason. Even though the governor says we are $900 billion in the positive, I mean, the numbers she comes up with, obviously this is liberal accounting. There is this lingering problem about unfunded liabilities and funding preschools and more affordable housing. I mean, there's just never enough education for progressives. She says those still have to be funded. For many years, we have put on this thing about gambling, and it doesn't pass the House because they don't want it here. But this one, everybody benefits, Cabanilla said. The farmers, the manufacturers, and with the revenue, we are going to get that. That proliferates in every household in the state. Billions of dollars is Cabanilla's estimate. A legal manufacturing industry could mean billions of dollars to Hawaii. You know, this is where she gets like really out of it. The state of Colorado made $1.6 billion in 2 weeks just by selling it. Now, it was actually $1.6 million in tax revenue, but when you're on the stuff, I guess, billion, million, it gets hard to differentiate. How much do you think we're going to make for producing it and selling it when we are the best? We are the best. We have the best marijuana in the world. I haven't tried it, but the people that have tried it say, wow, Cabanilla said. The first step in Cabanilla's plan is to pass a bill which puts the state's Department of Business, Economic Development and Tourism and Department of Agriculture in charge of a working group that would outline a plan to legalize the cultivation of marijuana in Hawaii for sale and export to foreign jurisdictions such as the Netherlands, where marijuana is legal. Well, she should also be looking at Portugal and other countries too. When the federal government lifts restrictions on marijuana use, Hawaii would be ready to rock, Cabanilla said. Commercial cultivation and distribution of marijuana is a bold approach towards generating revenue while capitalizing on Hawaii's inherent strengths. I mean, this woman is nuts. I mean, it's one thing for Colorado and Washington State and maybe Maine and throw in California and Oregon and a few other states to legalize it. It's another thing to get the federal government to lift the ban. I mean, now you're talking a whole different level. One is nullification. The other is getting the federal government to lift the marijuana stamp tax, to lift various parts of the the law that established the Bureau of Narcotics and Dangerous Drugs. There's umpteen laws covering the prohibition of marijuana at the federal level. It's just not going to it's not going to happen. I mean, she's nuts. She really is freaking crazy, this woman. And they don't want people smoking it there. The domestic market and the narco-tourism market is where the money's at here, honey. Imagine having an industry where it's grown and sold legally in marketplaces within the state of Hawaii, and then you can ship it and to other states. And FedEx would profit, UPS, the United States Postal Service. This would be a windfall. All the shipping personnel, the shipping industry in Hawaii, private courier services, this would be a windfall for the state. She's just got her sights set all wrong. Legalize it within the state, Cabanilla, and then narco-tourism. You'll fill those hotels, and then legalize casino gambling because, well, the state is so high on marijuana, they won't even see the negatives to casino gambling. And in a resort, casino gambling is a great thing because most of the people losing money are coming from other states and countries, especially China. Man, you legalize casino gambling in Hawaii, you get all the rich Japanese, all the rich Chinese, the people from Taiwan coming, from Thailand, all of those rich Asians who've sold us all this crap and gotten us into debt. The Koreans, man, they will flock there because the fact is Hawaii is far more beautiful than any of those other gambling venues in Asia. Legalize gambling, legalize marijuana, legalize prostitution. Get yourself a little libertarian paradise going there, and you guys will knock it out of the park. And that leads us to our next story, something written by William J. Bennett. He's the former drug czar. What he had to say on the subject of marijuana legalization. But that's up next on the FinancialSurvivalNetwork.com. I'm Kerry Lutz on 1230 WBZT. This is Triple Lutz Report 334. Don't forget the Liberty Mastermind Symposium, libertymastermind.us. And we are back on the FinancialSurvivalNetwork.com, 1230 WBZT. This is Triple Lutz 334, libertymastermind.us. Go there, sign up today. So William J. Bennett, he seems to think that when he was drug czar under Reagan or Bush or whomever, that the war on drugs became a rip-roaring success, lower drug consumption, I don't buy it for 2 seconds. Statistics, you can prove anything, right? And he wrote a really good article, though, which totally bolsters the libertarian point. So he says that marijuana is the most widely used and abused drug in the country. I don't think so. Illegal drug, yes. Abused and used, alcohol far more used and abused, far more deaths, tens of thousands of deaths every year, beatings, domestic violence from alcohol, horrible addiction, just the hospitals filled with alcohol abusers, mental hospitals filled with them, sanitariums, the addiction groups filled with them, But marijuana, definitely there are problems. He states the link between marijuana use and abnormal brain structure and development, including poor memory and schizophrenia, has been well documented, including a recent study from Northwestern University. Memory-related structures in their brains appeared to shrink and collapse inward, possibly reflecting a decrease in neurons. The study found, well, look, I remember the study with LSD. It said it split chromosomes. How much of this is real? How much of it isn't? I don't know. Probably chronic use is going to be bad with any drug. Infrequent recreational use, probably not so bad. Should you do any drug and drive, whether it's legal or illegal? Not so good. Drug driving, whether it's alcohol, pot, or whatever, bad idea. And he said to write off pot as no more dangerous than alcohol, as the president remarked, is to minimize alcohol's destructiveness and belittle pot's very real and harmful effects. I won't argue with him there. And he mentions the American Medical Association does not support marijuana legalization and reports heavy cannabis use in adolescents causes persistent impairments in neurocognitive performance and IQ and is associated with increased rates of anxiety, mood, and psychotic thought disorders. You know, it sounds a lot like Obamacare in that respect. You know, the AMA supported Obamacare, came out against Medicare. It supports it now. AMA is not the last word on anything. I wouldn't quote them in support or in opposition to any matter. They're a political organization. Point is, heavy use of anything. Certainly you don't want adolescents doing alcohol or cannabis, but the fact is a lot of these symptoms will reverse themselves once you stop using it. But you don't want kids doing anything. You don't want them taking these anti-ADHD drugs either. That's a bad thing for their brains. The AMA is totally in favor of that, and so is Big Pharma. So let's get all these kids off all these drugs, legal and illegal. Okay? So AMA is totally in favor of that. So I don't put anything there. And these ADHD drugs are totally mind-altering. And look, furthermore, he says marijuana is a mind-altering substance. You can chug a 40-ounce Coke or scarf down a bag of buttery microwave popcorn and still drive a car or operate machinery lucidly, but not when you're stoned. No serious doctor, except maybe a witch doctor, has ever recommended inhaling the strong and harsh smoke of burning leaves. Agreed. No dispute there. And that doesn't mean that prohibition is the way to go. So he says, unless you're smoking something, logic here is pretty strong. Yeah, that it's probably you shouldn't be doing this stuff, that intoxicants of any form, you shouldn't be doing, whether it's alcohol or marijuana or cocaine or heroin. You're better off without them. No argument. So then he goes on to what explains why liberals target unhealthy foods, yet turn a blind eye to a far more harmful substance. The answer is not clear, and there may not be a good answer at all. Perhaps marijuana advocates will say they're merely bowing to the reality that millions of Americans enjoy it despite its deleterious health effects. But the same thing could be said for trans fats. Rather than speculate, we should hold liberals accountable and demand that they answer publicly. If trans fats, GMOs, and other dangerous substances deserve to be banned in the name of public health, then why not marijuana as well? And he says conservatives and liberals who believe in the authority of government to promote the general welfare once found common ground in opposition to legalizing marijuana. Here's where you got it wrong, Bill. Okay? Government should not be able to ban substances and turn millions of citizens, into criminals in the name of promoting the general welfare. Okay? That's not the way it should be done. Somebody lighting up a joint in the privacy of their own home who doesn't intend to go out and drive a motor vehicle or operate heavy machinery and subject others to an unreasonable risk is not a criminal. That's where you got it wrong. And this is where the libertarian view should prevail. This is where the libertarian view makes total sense. Okay? If you're not harming another, have your trans fats, have your 40-ounce soda, have your marijuana, have your alcohol, have your GMOs if you're so desiring of it, and let the government keep its nose out of your goddamn business. That's what the libertarian view is, and that's pure consistency. but disclose all of the harmful side effects, disclose them all in proper labeling. I want to know what the GMO food is and what its potential harm is. I want to know everybody's viewpoint on it. I want to know that 40-ounce double gulp soda is going to turn me into a fat pig. So I want to know how many calories are in it per ounce so I can make my own decision, not Charlie Rangel, not Joe Biden, and least of all, not Bill Bennett. Okay? I don't want Patrick Kennedy deciding whether I should be smoking marijuana or not, or inhaling, snorting cocaine. Okay? I don't need you guys to decide that for me. But at the same hand, I don't want the children smoking marijuana or snorting cocaine, and anybody that's selling it to them, I want the book thrown at them. I want them thrown in jail for their whole lives because they don't have the right to make that decision, and they don't have the right to endanger the children in this case. So in that regard, I agree with Hillary Clinton that it does take a village to keep the kids safe. Okay? Period. So, Bill, get your nose out of my business. It's none of your business what I do in the safety of my own home. But when I'm behind the wheel and I'm driving stoned, or I'm driving drunk, or I'm operating heavy machinery that subjects others to an unreasonable risk, then it becomes the state's business and it becomes your business. But otherwise, stay out. Hey, this is a great story, and it shows how we can get conned and how social media and the internet is the ultimate con game, even better than Bernie Madoff at times. First, there was a story today on January 27th. It was in Forbes, so I believed it. I got conned, and it said that the People's Bank of China had stopped all money transfers to all banks because of housekeeping, because of system maintenance. And to Forbes' credit, and Zero Hedge nailed them on it, they pulled the story, they retracted it. It wasn't true. It looked like, it really looked like the monetary system was shutting down. Fortunately, got proven false. I have to admit that email to Citigroup did look kind of phony, but there's been a bunch of them. HSBC not letting people have their money could be phony, might not be, not sure at this point. So there's a great story. It's dealing with soccer, and I know you and I could care less about soccer. Probably some of you do, but this guy, he's a kid, 16 years old. High quality global journalism usually requires investment, but in this case, this kid he gained 20,000 Twitter followers. He exchanged messages with professional soccer players, and he occasionally seemed a step ahead on big moves in English soccer. But Samuel Rhodes, as his pseudonym was not the debonair blonde journalist shown in his Twitter avatar. He was the alter ego of Sam Gardner, a 16-year-old schoolboy from North London, and the rise and fall of Gardner, who this month saw his Twitter account suspended, is the latest example of impersonation on social media networks. And as they like to say, Icarus, his Icarus-like journey, he was the one with the wings, with wax and feathers, and he flew too close to the sun, began shortly after joining Twitter among frustration that no one was taking his opinions seriously. So he devised a target of 50,000 Twitter followers and a strategy of propagating rumor. And it was the only way to get big, Gardner told the Financial Times in his first interview on the affair. I mean, you got to admire this kid. He didn't hurt anybody, and he just got his name out there, which, hey, being in the alternative media, it took me years to get where this kid got in a few months. So I'm a little bit envious and a little bit admiring of him. He said, everyone has opinions. Not everyone has access to the transfer market, as he called it. And he pretended to be a journalist using as his first facade Dominic Jones, supposedly a football scout turned reporter at Goal Magazine. At first, I didn't know what I was doing. A couple of rumors, stats. He said I'd take a picture of a stadium and say reporting live. Then he got exposed when one of the magazine's actual journalists alerted Twitter, and then he changed his online name to Samuel Rhodes, at Samuel Rhodes, and his biography to freelance writer at the Daily Telegraph and Financial Times, even though he had no connection to either newspaper. I mean, this kid's pretty ballsy. So then he hooks on to this guy, Mohamed Saleh, one of Europe's brightest prospects, and he starts a rumor there. He said, I had a chat with somebody, Marino, yesterday. He claims, he just keeps coming up with all these rumors. And, a Financial Times spokesman said, we can admire his chutzpah, but sadly not his journalistic efforts. So Gardner then started selecting gossip and spinning it as fact. He targeted fans of troubled teams because they'd be the most gullible. You gotta really hand it to this kid. In November 2012, when there was speculation heightened that Chelsea would sack their manager, that's at some team there in England, they were going to sack their manager, Robert Di Matteo. He claimed to know that the dismissal would happen the following day, which of course he didn't. But sure enough, the manager got sacked. And he said, that got me a lot of credibility. Other predictions didn't come true, but didn't matter because other people are wrong too. And in his favor was the audience's insatiable demand for good gossip. And he picked up the lingo, imitated the language of sports journalists, and his tweets were focused at peak times, particularly evenings after matches. And before tweeting a rumor, he would often send a teaser, big news in 30 minutes. And that added to his follower account, which he said peaked at about 25,000. And Gardner interspersed his rumors with genuine tidbits from newspapers to lend his Twitter account more authority and credibility. And he somehow picked up with a couple of legitimate footballers, and he was actually sending private messages back and forth to them. And, but they said his best source remained his imagination. And he tweeted that this guy, Mohamed Salah, one of Europe's brightest prospects, was finalizing a £9 million move to Liverpool. And the claim was denied by Liverpool, but picked up on by sports websites, including Al Jazeera's. And Sam Rhodes was briefly among the most popular Twitter phrases in Egypt, Salah's home country. And he just said he made this up in his living room, seeing his rumor echo online. And a Telegraph journalist finally, however, identified the account as a fake, leading to its suspension. So Gardner is now 17, maintains his plan was never to make financial gains, but to build a platform for his passionate views on soccer, particularly Arsenal. I did maybe feel a tiny bit of guilt, but not that much, he says. He now wants to be a real journalist, and I want to be a real radio guy, but the mainstream will never have me. So you are stuck with me here on the financialsurvivalnetwork.com. I'm Kerry Lutz, and hopefully this will be a great week for everybody out there. I know it's starting out great for me. I am having the time of my life. Don't let anything stand in your way from you having the time of your life. There's nothing in your way. There are no obstacles except that the ones you place there. FinancialSurvivalNetwork.com. Don't forget LibertyMastermind.us. I'm looking forward to seeing all of you there. 1230 WBZT. Kerry Lutz. It's been another Triple Lutz Report. Signing off. Hi, it's Kerry Lutz. I recently decided to move my retirement account into physical precious metals to hedge against the coming times. If you want to move an existing retirement account into physical precious metals that you can hold in your hand, tax-free, there's no company that can do it more quickly and efficiently than Regal Assets. It took them just 24 hours to open my new IRA account, and all I had to do was fill out one simple form. The best part is that Regal Assets does all the work for you. They cover the setup and administrative costs for 2013. If you're interested in making the same move I did, call 855-678-6620, 855-678-6620. That's 855-678-6620, or visit them at regalassets.com. You'll be glad you did, and tell them Kerry sent you.
The Financial Survival Network, helping you to survive and thrive in the new economy. Get our complimentary newsletter at financialsurvivalnetwork.com. This is the Financial Survival Network.